Hi, classmates and professor. Thank you for viewing my presentation. This is going to be a presentation on combining law and psychology. Just to let you have a little disclaimer from me right now, please bear with me. I am dealing with no air conditioner in 90-degree heat in South Louisiana. So I'll try to do this as professionally as I can. So this is my title page showing that I am going to be talking to you about combining law and psychology. A little outline. I'm going to discuss what forensic psychology is, the history of forensic psychology, growth in the field, the problems in the field, alternate careers without going into forensic psychology as far as having a doctorate's degree or a master's degree, and also the conclusion. What is forensic psychology? Forensics psychologists and psychiatrists are trained experts often assigned to review complex case material, interview criminal defendants or civil litigants, and provide expert opinions to assist the court. A lot of times what these forensic psychologists and psychiatrists will do is determine if a defendant is mentally capable of standing trial, and if they were in a mental capacity to understand what they were doing at the time of the crime, as well as in domestic cases, they will interview both the parents of a child, the child, and sometimes decide if they should be put into foster care or if the parents are capable of taking care of the child. The reason I chose this topic is because I have an extensive background in law and have a passion for law, and have also loved psychology since my first class in high school. So this would combine two of my passions, which is psychology and law. When I think of forensic psychology, I think of the movie Primal Fear. This is a picture of the movie from Primal Fear, where the defendant is pictured with his attorney, played by Richard Gere, and the forensic psychologist that the attorney hired to see the mental capacity of his client. I don't know if any of you watched the movie, but it was quite a movie where he played a part of someone who committed murder and also played to have multiple personalities. And it's a great movie from what I can remember. It's been a long time, but this is something that very much interests me. Here's a little timeline as far as to the history of forensic psychology. In 1893 is when the first experiment in legal psychology / forensic psychology took place. It had a bit of a growth, and then in the time between 1920 and 1940, it kind of remained stagnant. People were kind of questioning its reliability and if this was something they actually wanted to pursue or have in their court system. In 1970s, there was a rebirth, and there started to be a rise in interest from students as far as combining law in their psychology and psychology in their law. In the 1980s, that's when there were major developments. This is when the ethics of the two kind of came into question, and I'll talk about the ethics about that later on, that the American Psychology Association ended up determining guidelines for forensic psychology because of the ethics in law compared to the ethics in forensic psychology. In 1990s, they saw an expansion in the interest in forensic psychology, and in the 2000s, there's been new challenges, and also I'll discuss that later on in the presentation as well. Let's talk about growth in the field. People were shocked at the miscarriage of justice and looking to understand the offender, investigator, and justice system played behavior. Society is looking to legal psychology for both explanations and solutions. Some people just don't want to understand how, after a defendant is charged, how going into a state psychological or psychiatric facility, they aren't treated the way they should be and aren't getting the best care. They just state that they're criminals and just kind of throw them to the wayside. So this is what sparked interest in the field and helped with the growth. Here are some problems with the field. The cost of combining law and psychology for college students was a large concern. Law students were worried how much longer it would add to their degree, as well as how much tuition it would add to their degree. Psychology students were also worried about how they would understand the law when they were going to school for something in a completely different field. So some professors were combining the two without them really stating you're going to be having a psychology/legal class, and kind of incorporated the two. And again, that helped with the rise of it. The ethical issues came the late 1970s. I want to say it was 1979 that the American Psychological Association developed Division 41, which was called the American Psychology-Law Society. This developed some guidelines for forensic psychologists who combine both law and psychology to help them with staying within the ethical guidelines, because some of the ethics for law were different than psychology. Something that was ethical in law was unethical in psychology, and vice versa. So there needs to be a specific guideline for these forensic psychologists to follow, so they knew that they were within the requirements of their job without jeopardizing the case or their license for these certain situations. Another concern was outcome variance. They were questioning how one forensic psychologist could review documentation and come up with one solution and one determination, and another one look at the same evidence provided and come up with a completely different solution and recommendation. Kind of like if another student is doing their presentation on law and psychology, their presentation may be completely different than what I have researched and come up with. That was kind of what was worrying people as far as forensic psychology, because as with many experts, your defense and your prosecution are both going to get their own party to try to testify to prove their point. So there really isn't a solution to that. They're working on a solution to that, and there's also more investigation and more studies that are going into forensic psychology and trying to narrow down the outcomes that may be presented, because it's not really what they would call an exact science or an actual science to provide firm facts. It's based on opinions and experience. What other alternate careers could you have? Or I'm going to discuss an alternate career that I chose that would still combine both law and psychology, wouldn't put me on the borderline of unethical either in law or psychology, but still utilize my degree in psychology as well as my experience in law. Still being able to marry the two without having to go into a master's program and possibly a doctorate program, which is something I'm not sure I want to do yet, but I'm leaving that open to whatever God is willing to put in my way and wherever He's willing to lead me. Where He needs me, that's where I'm going to be. But at this time, at this point, I can marry the two and take a break from my education and spend some much needed time with my family for a little while. So I found human resources. Human resources is the organizational function related to the procurement and relation of talented employees. These human resource managers, associates, they must be abreast of the current local laws regarding employment for both employers and employees. They are here to provide problem-solving skills for both sides, mainly preventative solutions to try to avoid anything that may stop an employee from wanting to file suit against the company or anything like that. It's to try to better the company and help the employees where everybody come to a solution where everybody can be happy with the decision. There's also required continued education for human resources, which can be taken and done on a more localized level instead of a broad, vast level. It's more dedicated to your area and your type of industry. In conclusion, forensic psychology has both pros and cons, just as any field that you may decide to go into. It's come a long way since the beginning in 1893. And it continues to be a growing field. There's still research being done as far as how much growth has happened between the time frame of 2014 to present. There was a study done between 2009 to 2014 that showed a 28% growth in forensic psychology, as well as law and psychology being combined. This is an intriguing field for me and something that I'm definitely going to pursue if God calls me that way. It's something I'm very interested in. For the time being, I am going to look into possibilities of human resources. I've even contacted the owners of the company I presently work for and have asked to be put into this type of role because it's a fairly new company and they don't have that yet. And this is something I would be very interested in and can utilize my degree and do something where I'm helping others as well as using my degree and helping the company prevent any type of legal action in advance. The field of psychology opens so many doors, and I didn't realize that until this class when Landrum and Davis talked about the different fields that you could go into with a bachelor's and other fields with a master's. Usually when people hear that I'm getting a psychology degree and they say, just a bachelor's? Yeah, just a bachelor's. And well, you can't do nothing with that. Yeah, you can. So I think a lot of people are misinformed or uninformed about the potential and the possibilities that you have with obtaining just a bachelor's degree in psychology. So I really enjoyed this class and I love every part of psychology and I look forward to learning more, and thanks for watching.